Hi there, welcome to Series 15, and we're up to number 12 now. And we're talking about Jacob and his journey off. It says here, Jacob meets God at Bethel, and verses 10 and 12 go, Jacob's dream of the ladder. Now, Jacob went off to Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top was reached to heaven, and there were angels of God ascending and descending on it. This is a pretty weird dream. Notice it says he went to Haran, so he's doing what his dad told him to. Jacob travelled eastward towards the ancestral home of his grandfather Abraham. And we can see references to that in Genesis 11 and Genesis 24. Then he had a dream. This is, remember, a desolate wilderness. Jacob had a significant dream as he used a stone for a pillow. I'm not sure that would have been overly comfortable. One can only imagine the strange flood of feelings in Jacob at the moment. The fear, the loneliness, the isolation, but also the anticipation and the excitement. This was an incredibly important time in Jacob's life. It says in the dream he saw that a ladder was set upon the earth, and at the top of it reached heaven. That's a very long ladder. And the angels of God were ascending and descending, going up and down. In Jacob's dream, there was a way to access heaven. Jacob now knew God was closer than he ever had before believed, and there was a real access and interaction between heaven and earth, or between God and him. You see, it says there, the God of Bethel is a God who does concern himself with the things of earth, not a God who shuts himself up in heaven. But God put the ladder fixed between heaven and earth. That's a quote from Spurgeon. And when we think about it, it's a good way of putting it. He goes on and says, and talks about how Jesus made this access to heaven in John chapter 1 and verse 51. He is now, heaven came down to earth, down to the people, by which the people can get to heaven. Jesus is the Messiah, or he is the ladder, if you want to use that metaphor as well. There is a way for us to access heaven. And he said to him, most assuredly, I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. God really did use that. And if you can hear that noise in the background, it's the dog trying to get in the door. Everything happens all at once in this place. But we're going to keep going while Gary lets the dog in. Jesus is the way to heaven. Jesus does not merely show humanity a way, he is the actual way. Jesus said of himself, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And that's John 14:6 if you want to have a look. You see, God speaks to Jacob confirming the covenant. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord your God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. Also, your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west, and you shall spread abroad to the east, and to the north and the south. And in you and in your seed all the families on earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken. That's a really, really significant thing for God to say to Jacob. Notice it says there at the beginning of that, I am the Lord God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. Jacob had certainly heard of this God who Abraham had met and who had appeared to him and to Isaac. And now this same God meets Jacob in a very personal way. This is life-changing. This is a life-changing experience for this guy, Jacob. You see, He goes on and says, the land on which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants. These words were for comfort and hoped that to Jacob, it's a critical crossroads in his life. God repeated to Jacob the terms of the covenant which he gave to both Abraham and to Isaac. Now, Isaac had given him the blessing, but this is God repeating the covenant. This relationship with God goes on through this family. Previously, Isaac told Jacob that the covenant was his, but now the voice of God confirms it. God promised Jacob, guess what? The same thing that was in the promise given to him by his father. No, remember, a land and a nation. And that's where he says your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. And of course, the blessing in you and your seed, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. It's the same agreement, the same covenant going through the family. God goes on here and says, I'm with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. Wow. The promise of the land, the nation, and the blessing was of little value if Jacob didn't live long enough to get back to the land. God promised him and his father that he would be the descendants of God's promise. Here, God promised to be present with Jacob and to protect him until all the promises were fulfilled. That is a huge God. Bless you.